Everyone says expensive wood glue is stronger. But is it actually stronger? Or are woodworkers just paying extra for a brand name? Today, I'm testing cheap wood glue against premium wood glue in a series of real-world woodworking challenges. We'll test strength, durability, water resistance, and most importantly, which one gives you the best value for your money. Because by the end of this video, one of these glues is going to completely fail. And honestly, I wasn't expecting the results. So I went out and bought several wood glues. Some were extremely cheap, the kind you can find almost anywhere. Others were premium woodworking glues trusted by professionals. At first glance, they all look pretty similar. They're all designed to bond wood. They're all marketed as strong. And they all claim to create permanent joints. But the price difference? Massive. Some cost 2 or 3 times more than the cheapest option. So naturally, the first question I wanted answered was simple. Do expensive wood glues actually create stronger joints? To find out, I prepared identical pieces of hardwood. Same species. Same dimensions. Same glue-up process. Every sample was clamped using the same pressure and allowed to cure for the same amount of time. No shortcuts. No special treatment. Just a fair test. After everything cured, it was time for the first challenge. And honestly, this is where things got interesting. I started applying force to the first sample bonded with the cheap glue. At first, it held surprisingly well. Much better than I expected. The joint didn't immediately fail. It took a decent amount of force before something finally gave way. Then I tested the premium glue sample. And the result looked almost identical. At least initially. Which honestly surprised me. Because based on price alone, I expected a huge difference. But then I looked more closely. The way the samples failed was completely different. The cheap glue joint separated directly along the glue line. The bond itself was the weak point. But the premium glue sample? The wood started failing before the glue did. That's a big deal. Because in woodworking, the ideal glue joint is stronger than the wood itself. And that's exactly what happened. At this point, the premium glue had a small lead. But one test isn't enough. Because woodworking projects aren't just about strength. They also deal with moisture, temperature changes, and years of real-world use. So I moved on to something every woodworker eventually faces. Water exposure. Now obviously, not every project lives outdoors. But accidental spills happen. Humidity happens. And if you're building outdoor furniture, water resistance matters a lot. So I submerged several glued samples in water. Then I waited. And waited. And waited. After the soak period was complete, I removed the samples and checked the joints. The cheap glue immediately showed signs of weakness. Some swelling. Some softening. And a few areas that looked concerning. The premium glue samples? Much better. Not perfect. But noticeably stronger. At this point, the expensive glue was starting to justify its price. But then I started wondering something. What about long-term durability? Because a strong joint today doesn't mean much if it fails a year later. So I created another challenge. Repeated stress. Small movements. Constant pressure. The kind of abuse furniture experiences over time. And that's when I noticed one of the biggest differences so far. The premium glue joints remained incredibly solid. The cheap glue joints weren't terrible. But they definitely showed signs of fatigue much sooner. And honestly, this wasn't the result I expected going into the test. because I assumed most wood glues would perform similarly. But the differences were becoming impossible to ignore. At this point, expensive glue was winning. But before you rush out and spend more money, there's still one huge question left unanswered. And it's the question that actually matters. Is the extra performance worth the extra cost? Because the next test completely changed how I look at wood glue.